And we are live. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen from around the globe. We are here on behalf of Mandoulides schools to discuss the dreadful situation between Russia and Ukraine. My name is Panagiotis Hatsikalias, Panos for short, and I am your host for today. I'm accompanied by the incredible Mandoulides podcast team here, so guys, please feel free to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Maria.
I'm Kasi.
And I'm Anthony.
Thank you guys for finishing with the introductions. Now that those are out of the way, let's get into the historical references. In order to fully grasp the current situation, we need to have a historical background of information that will help us tackle the issue at hand and discuss more freely. So, more on that, Kasi, please.
Okay, so some basic terms before we move on to what actually is happening in Ukraine. Starting off with the Soviet Union, otherwise known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, for short USSR, was made up of 15 Soviet Socialist republics and was created on the 13th of December 1992, following the Russian Revolution. And now, on December 25th, 1991, the USSR collapsed, with multiple Soviet republics having already declared their independence from the USSR, with Ukraine being one of them. Now, in the midst of all that, in 1949, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was created, with 30 member states, with the goal of providing military aid to defend its member states from the USSR. That was also followed by an informal agreement between NATO and Russia regarding the expansion of NATO, stating that its borders wouldn't come as close to the borders of Russia as they are today.
Thank you, Kosi, for the informational background on the USSR and NATO. We will now be moving on to an open discussion regarding the immediate relevance of the situation in Ukraine. I'm assuming we are all familiar with what's happening out there. There have been tanks, there have been airstrikes seen all over the place. I mean, it's a total chaos out there. And Putin has made it abundantly clear that he is invading Ukraine. Now, what do you guys think are his reasons for doing so?
So I'm going to go ahead and start off. Basically, what's happening right now is the fact that the Soviet Union existed at some point makes Putin believe that Ukraine and Russia are in some way connected, with Ukraine not sharing the same opinion. Ukraine wants to be independent from anything Russian related, whereas Putin has made it clear that he shares the opinion that Ukraine is part of Russia and should eventually go back to that feeling of the Soviet Union. And that is made very clear with his invasion in Crimea happening first time in 2014.
What Kosi said is partially true because Ukraine used to be under Russia's influence when the USSR was still a thing. But after its collapse, I mean, Ukraine is an independent state which has the authority to choose for its own whether it wants to join NATO or form a new alliance with Russia. But Russia obviously has problems with recognizing their sovereignty, so that is why Putin invaded Ukraine in the first place under the fabrication that it's for the liberation of Crimea and the people of Ukraine who are supposedly Russian speaking. Some of them are, but not all of them. So obviously that does not justify Putin's actions.
Putin has been in power from 2000 to 2008 and from 2012 up till now. Do you guys think that him being president for all these years may have taken its toll on his decision making?
Yes, it's completely possible that too much leadership has taken a toll to his mental health. I mean, there's a reason why countries set a boundary as to how many years and how many times someone can become president of each country. And I think that's something that President Putin decided to change in terms of the Russian law a couple of years ago, as for him to be able to become president multiple times.
My personal take on this is that President Putin in his entire presidency hasn't shown signs of irrationality. And what I mean by that is that he got a nation that was absolutely devastated from the collapse of the Soviet Union. And not only did he manage to recover it to be the second largest economy in the world in terms of GDP strength, he also managed to export his own gas and electricity to Europe. It is imperative that those achievements of his are taken into consideration before making assumptions and statements about time spent in a leading position negatively affecting his decision making. Now, I'm not saying President Putin is justified for his actions, In fact, I was about to mention, his decision to opt in warfare with Ukraine is, to say the least, an infringement of democracy, and the world isn't just going to stand there and watch. In fact, the world has spoken in favor of Ukraine already. There have been protests in Russia that vouch against war, and Russian officials have been seen arresting people just because they're exercising their right to protest. That is an active violation of the democracy rights, and Putin knows that. However, whether this was all planned on his end or whether he did not expect things to go south remains to be seen, and the future of the situation still remains unclear.
The thing is that now this war has gone into multiple depths. Right now, Ukraine is fighting a war for their democracy, for their peace, but they're also fighting the EU's war. Because Ukraine is a step, literally, before Poland. And if Russia gets into Poland, that means that NATO is going to have to get involved. That means that the EU is going to have significant damage from it. So right now, Ukraine is trying to save the whole world right now. And yes, the EU has been doing a lot with the sanctions, economically, NATO sending military, etc. But the thing is that Russia has a lot of influence and a lot of power on everybody. However many sanctions the EU has put onto them already, we see that it's having a backlash in the populations of member states' countries as well.
On a broader context, Russia is very aware that they are fighting a war against the world, basically. Although they have had an alliance with China. China is willing to back them up, and seeing as the US is the center of NATO, they have imposed sanctions on the Russian economy, mainly freezing all bank accounts, cutting imports and exports, and basically inflicting some serious damage on the Russian infrastructure regarding the economic side of things. But do you guys think this will be enough to bring down Russia?
Aside from the important sanctions that have been implemented, we also see a lot of little things happening by little organizations or things that have a big influence in the EU, for example, like the Eurovision Song Contest imposing sanctions.
I mean, oh my god, Putin is out of the Eurovision, and I envision him being like, no way.
I mean, McDonald's is out.
Yeah, knowing that this is like has a more like of a meaning that we do not support Russia. At the same time, it's kind of crazy to see a war happening somewhere and then some people being like, Russia is out of the Eurovision, so problem solved. Okay, we're joking about it, but the fact that some individual organizations have done something to show their support for Ukraine, as small as putting Russia outside of the Eurovision Song Contest, it has a meaning behind it. And it's the meaning that they're trying to convey. And it's not actually the fact that, we don't have Russia in the Eurovision anymore, or that Apple doesn't sell phones to Russia anymore.
I mean, quite frankly, everybody's trying to play a part in this as best they can.
Show their support.
I mean, yes, maybe Russia being out of the Eurovision is not much. In the end of the day, though, it is something. Everybody's just trying to help as best they can as an organization.
It's kind of like trying to convey a meaning. I think the message we're trying to get across is that war is bad for every party involved, regardless of their ethnicity or what their end goal might be. And this can be validated. This can be seen from the results. Like, let's take a look at some statistics here. We have over 30,000 deaths and over 40,000 casualties in a matter of 3 weeks. That goes on to say a lot about the humanitarian impact this war is having on the world. What do you guys think on that?
So, aside the sanctions and everything, we also see a whole lot of support from both member states of the EU and also just countries within the European continent. We see that countries like Switzerland or Poland have done everything they could to support Ukraine. We have Poland opening their borders and accepting millions of Ukrainians and allowing for them to stay there for as long as they need with no paperwork needed, just allowing them to skip all the bureaucratic procedures. So Maria Lorna, you want to add something on that?
Sure, I'd also like to add that for the first time after the Second World War, Germany is now allowed to purchase missiles and strikes and stuff like that in order to send to the Ukrainian government. I mean, there are multiple countries that have sent their support, however well they could. Just like Albania, Bulgaria, Croatia, Hungary, Iceland, we're listening to countries such as those actually carrying and sending their support, besides the fact that Sweden and Finland are also getting threatened by the Russians.
And at the same time, we have countries like Greece who are on their own struggling with their economic crisis and everything, that they are still supporting Ukraine in any way they can, sending military supplies and showcasing their support actively.
Sorry to interrupt you, Kosi. Anthony wants to add something on this, so please go ahead, Anthony.
It's true that Croatia, Poland, and Romania are already welcoming Ukrainian refugees. Italy is also providing immediate financial assistance to the Ukrainian government, and Turkey has deepened its defense ties with Ukraine and offered humanitarian aid.
That is actually very interesting to know. Does anyone here happen to know anything about Switzerland? Because Switzerland is highly regarded as a nation that is neutral. It does not partake in conflicts, and it does not pick sides when it comes to conflict between two other nations. Does anyone know anything about Switzerland in this current situation? Because I heard that things are different this time around.
We also see Switzerland breaking its silence and neutrality for the first time in 200 years, and that's quite impressive in my opinion.
So 200 years of silence were broken just so Switzerland would voice their objections to what Russia is doing right now. And this is not even the only thing we should take note of. For example, Maria, would you like to tell us a bit about what happened on the 25th of February 2022?
On the 25th of February 2022, the NATO leaders agreed upon their collective response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, alongside Finland and Sweden, NATO's close partners that were also at the time, and now as well, being threatened by the Russian army in case it decided to enter NATO as well.
So we are witnessing an enormous positive response in favor of Ukraine from the entire world, but it is also very important that we highlight what Russia has in its own arsenal, because let me tell you, Russia did their homework on this one. For example, right now, Russia is providing the entirety of Europe with gas. That gas is called the Nord Stream, and that is basically a network of huge pipes that are providing gas to Germany, and then Germany distributes it to the rest of Europe. But right now, Russia is regarded as an enemy nation, and by NATO orders, all member states of NATO are required to cut off any connection with the Nord Stream because it is basically helping the enemy. And by cutting off connections with the Nord Stream right now, Europe is experiencing some very high inflations in gas prices and electricity prices. And Europe is kind of like caught in the middle of all this. And this is tragic because Europe does not have a choice here. They have to fight in favor of Ukraine. And Russia does not provide them with gas. So Europe is struggling financially. Luckily, though, the United States, seeing as they are the founding nation of NATO, are now imposing some serious sanctions on Putin and his nation. So Russia right now is experiencing a monetary crisis, and their banks have all been frozen. There are no imports, there are no exports. A huge hit to the Russian economy and the Russian infrastructure. So what do you guys think on that?
What is happening right now is that the EU is solely dependent on Russia for the energy intake of the whole union, and it's quite contradicting to what they're believing right now, going against Russia and their actions and condemning their actions against Ukraine. So right now we are faced with the problem of Europe having single providers of specific things. This is not just about Russia. We see it happening with a whole of other imports happening in the EU. So what we have right now is the EU trying to make the sustainable shift it has been trying to do ever since 2015 with the sustainable goals and the whole Renewable Energy Act the EU is doing. But this actually requires time, and this requires a lot of effort. And the EU is also in the middle of war because they are supporting Ukraine, and anybody supporting either parties, they are in the middle of the war. They are affected by the sanctions imposed. They are affected by what's happening to one of their member states. So we are waiting to see what Europe will do about that, and we for sure will see a lot of changes in the economical aspect of energy provision.
I agree with this, and I would like to point out some of the leverages that Putin has right now. So, first of all, if Putin launches an invasion, something that could even escalate to a bigger scale war against Ukraine, NATO allies won't be technically able to legally fight back and back up Ukraine since Ukraine isn't a part of NATO. In addition, just like Kosi said before, it's true that the whole Europe is undeniably dependent to a great extent on Russia for the gas supplies that are transferred to the other European countries such as Germany, France, Italy through the Nord Stream. Almost one third of Europe's total gas consumption comes from Russia. Last but not least, let's not overlook the insane amount of nuclear weapons that Russia currently has. Putin has reportedly said that if anyone stands in his way, he will not hesitate to proceed to using nuclear weapons and literally destroying a big part of Europe.
Quite frankly, let's give credit where it's due. I feel like in one night after the full scale invasion actually started, that the EU has shown a different face. We're looking at an EU that is more connected than ever, quite frankly, and they are suddenly discussing upon and actually agreeing and having resolutions in one night that do create the sanctions and everything that was projected to Russia in a very short amount of time, something that we haven't really seen from the EU before.
So at the same time, we see the EU working as a team, as a union, which is something we have been waiting to see for quite a while right now. But we see the interconnectivity happening. We see the promotion of union. We see the promotion of a sense of belonging inside the EU. And it's something we, as European citizens, should be proud of that. Seeing the immediate action taken by not only the EU as an independent thing, but also all the member states in the EU and all the states outside of the European Union that are just standing there with Ukraine, supporting in any way they can.
Keeping in mind what was previously said about the sense of belonging, the idea of a legitimate union, let's not forget and let's keep in mind some other implications of this ongoing invasion in Ukraine, such as the refugee crisis, the loss of human lives, and the lack of asylum. These are three crucial problems that are furtherly exacerbated by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and crisis. And it's true that the refugee crisis and the refugee problem is a problem that has existed for so many years. And in my opinion, it's impressive that during these difficult times, during this invasion in Ukraine, we see many countries such as Romania, Croatia, and Poland opening their borders and welcoming a huge wave of refugees seeking asylum to these countries.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And thank you, Anthony, for the remark on the COVID situation, because we should not forget it's not just the war between Ukraine and Russia, it's also the war we're fighting with an enemy that cannot be seen, an enemy that is very powerful, and one enemy that we should not underestimate in any way, shape, or form. And that is COVID, because COVID is not just a regular virus. COVID is a virus that has changed our lives dramatically over the past 2 to 3 years. And we can see that situation improving over time, but that does not mean we should rest easy that this is over. The pandemic is still going on, so guys, please stay safe, wear masks, get vaccinated, all that good stuff. Alright, so I think our time is up for the podcast. I think we have covered every topic we needed to cover. So before we sign off, I just want to ask for your guys' wishes, anything you want to share with the people in Ukraine right now who are going through a very difficult time, any people who are actively engaged in war, people from other nations who are going to Ukraine just so they can help in any way they can, stuff like that. Would you like to share anything of that sort?
So for me, all I wish for now is that we don't need to talk of war in the future. I really hope that we will be able to create a world in which our kids will be asking us what was war and they will never have to face it in their everyday life. It is very unfortunate that in the 21st century we have people dying, we have countries invading other countries, and it's just very saddening to know that this is all happening in our modern world. This is all happening in the EU and outside the EU. And we really do hope that everybody is doing okay and staying safe no matter where they're at, seeking help and seeking a safe space. So for me, to everybody being affected by these awful things happening all over the world, just keep being safe and keep being hopeful for a better tomorrow.
I completely agree with what you said, Gussie. I think that this is one of the larger problems that our generation is going to have to face. I really hope that our generation is going to do a better job. I feel like we don't have to hide behind our fingers anymore, and that whoever needs help seeks for it, and that we break the stereotypes, and that we look forward to a better and clearer future. Everybody should be safe. Everybody should not be afraid that their freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, their freedoms in general are taken away from them. And I feel like everybody should be fighting for a better tomorrow.
I agree. I totally agree with you, Maria. And we can do and we should do a better job. I believe and I think I'm speaking on behalf of everyone on this that we really want this crisis with Ukraine to end, and we surely don't want to have to face something similar in the future.
So before we sign off, I just want to add my own personal cherry on top to this whole thing. And I think, on behalf of everyone here, what we all wished for basically comes down to a huge thank you to all the countries that are actively involved in helping Ukraine, all the people that are providing any form of assistance, be it little or much, doesn't really matter. All that matters is the effort they're putting into helping the Ukrainians and the thought of caring for someone who is in danger right now. It goes without saying that we're all hoping for a brighter future and that we get through this together and we get out of it intact. So, last but not least, I just want to say that I really hope this does not reach a climax of a third world war. I mean, I think 2 world wars were more than enough for humanity to understand that having conflicts between each other really does not benefit anyone. Like, there is no gain out of this. This much should be obvious to everyone, but apparently we're still having conflicts of this kind. And it's the 21st century. We're almost reaching 2025. And we're still fighting with each other for differences we had in the past. Honestly, it kind of boggles me that humanity doesn't focus on advancing and rather focuses on gaining more. This is the eternal greed that is taking over. We just want more and more. And in our attempt to actually solidify our victories, we kind of reach an imperialistic kind of lifestyle. And that's not good. We should cherish life. We shouldn't just be wasting it on attaining more stuff. I mean, we already have a world that is full of everything. There is technology, there is science, there is arts, there is literature, there is a whole bunch of stuff. Why are we still focusing on war? I don't get it. But it's not my place to be judgmental to others. I mean, everyone is entitled to their own opinions. And I wholeheartedly wish that in the future we manage to solidify world peace once and for all, so that everyone can live a happy life. And on that positive note, I think this was all for today. Thank you to everyone who has stayed through the entirety of this podcast. We really appreciate it. This is the Mandoulides podcast team signing out.